setting the stage for your Georgia Saturday. This is DawgNation GameDay, brought to you by R.S. Andrews, Kroger, Pella Windows and Doors, Sir Chero's, Lassiter Tractor, White's Pools, the UGA Bookstore, and Jittery Joe's Coffee. Now here's your host, Kaylee Mansell.
We begin today's show with a shot of the battlefield here at Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville, Florida. DawgNation, welcome into DawgNation GameDay. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Jeff Sentell. Jeff, you know what I love about this place? You get to see swimming pools in a stadium. You get to watch fans putt for a beer. You get to see the yachts lined up along the river. I mean, seriously, there's nothing better than this.
Kaylee, there ain't nothing like it nowhere, especially college football environment. This is just theater of the weird and the fun and the happy. Somehow I've seen 3 Florida fans with Cam Newton jerseys on this morning. That makes no sense. Apparently, we've put eyes on a former Bachelor contestant walking the grounds on the banks of the St. Johns River. The Jacksonville Bulldog Club, awesome, awesome, awesome. Always host us. Give us a great barbecue plate. I know they make Kaylee smile right before we go on air.
Yeah.
It is just, to quote from the great movie of a time gone by, Legally Blonde, Elle Woods, just a perfect day every time you're in Jacksonville.
It is certainly a sight to see. I think last year was my first time being here. This was the trip that I couldn't be more excited for, to get back here. It's crazy to think that there's only going to be 2 more years of this before it goes under renovations. I see you shaking your head. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, there's going to be a whole crew of like somebody that goes to school at Georgia. And this game is going to force somebody to have a 5-year plan so they can sit there and make sure they go to the tailgate and the cocktail party at least 2 or 3 times. I know Tampa, I know Atlanta. There's nothing like Jacksonville. You come into the city limits and the banners on street signs say since 1933. It just is an institution for college football.
Here's what I love about today. You have all of DawgNation that unites as Gator haters, but if you're a true Georgia fan, you know that you're not just a Gator hater today, but a Gator hater the rest of the year. Let's show you this right here.
Georgia Bulldogs have gotten another win against those lousy, stinking Gators.
This is what it's all about here right now. It's great to be a Gator hater.
We believe a good Georgia fan is a Gator hater first and foremost. This is my brand new buddy. It is Eddie. Eddie is my blind squirrel. Dan Mullen the other day talked about Georgia winning the SEC, saying 1 year doesn't really prove anything, that even a blind squirrel can find a nut. Can we kind of celebrate the silliness of Marco Wilson throwing a shoe? On my desk every day from now on with Eddie, we're going to have this. This is our golden shoe. This is our trophy to signify Marco Wilson's thrown shoe that cost Florida the game against LSU.
In honor of Billy Napier having some trouble with the water bottle and having some issues with the rural fans, here's what we've got. It's Billy Napier's swamp water here, made in a basement in a rural part of Central Florida.
It feels good to be a Gator hater here today.
Pictures of Brandon dressing up like a woman for
All right, I mean, Jeff, that is, you can't get any more Brandon Adams Gator hater than that. I think he said it best. Any true dog fan is a Gator hater at most.
I mean, the countdown, Kaylee, when it reaches into the 4 digits, I know it makes Brandon smile. I know it makes DawgNation smile. I mean, folks, I got to tell you, please feel free to comment in the comment section. What Kirby and Georgia are doing to the Gators right now in this run, it's going to wind up, in my opinion, a bigger era than what Spurrier put on the Dogs during his heyday.
Yeah, and when you look at the rivalry now, the Dogs are certainly on the right side of it. They can still make history today, though. It's been since the 1980s since Georgia won 4 games in a row, and if there is anybody that can lead the Dogs to that victory, it's none other than Kirby Smart.
You got 1983 was the last time that happened, Kaylee. That was many, many, many moons ago, kind of in Run Lindsay Run territory. And, I'm going to just tell you, this is a Chamber of Commerce day here in Jacksonville. If you've never been, please come, because this feels like Kaylee and I, what we do is we get here, we take a lap, and it's just like the most fun lap.
Yeah.
It feels like, everybody's seen the movie Groundhog Day? That's what it feels like. You want to repeat it over and over. Kaylee talked about, you walk by a tailgate, these gentlemen from Savannah, same spot every year, and they have an exhibition where you punt for a beverage. It could be a seltzer, it could be a water, it could be an adult beverage. We are here at the cocktail party.
Yeah.
And you've got to put it in between two cones. And then as the hours flow by, the cones get wider and wider and wider. And it's just the most simple, crazy entertainment, but it goes on for hours.
So
there's places like this everywhere you go.
I mean, truly, there is nothing like it. So in just a minute, we're going to give you a breakdown of those lousy, stinking Gators and everything that Kirby Smart had to say about them this week. But I want to remind you guys that on DawgNation GameDay, we always have a jam-packed show today that includes the former Georgia linebacker, Davin Bellamy. He's going to join us here in a few minutes, and he's going to let us know what this rivalry means to him and if he's satisfied with the Georgia defense this far. Then Jeff and I will do our impact players of the game. I think you and I both can agree that Georgia-Florida can make or break a player. We're going to see who has got the juice today. Then we're going to get a little bit of Sentell's intel live with me in person, but I got to ask you just how good DJ Lagway is. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with Connor Riley as he gives us the final availability report, so we'll have an update on players like Tate Ratledge, Jordan Hall, and see just how far along Michael Williams is. But let's start with this. I think that Florida is not necessarily the train wreck we thought they were going to be coming into this game. Maybe have surprised some people, not as good as they have been in the past, but with Kirby Smart and Billy Napier working together for 4 years on staff at Alabama, I think it is evident, and I think it is genuine, that Kirby Smart really does have respect for Billy Napier, and maybe that takes something away from this rivalry. You just don't hate the guy like you did Florida coaches in the past. In fact, Kirby Smart talked about Billy Napier this week. Here's his thoughts on Napier and the Florida program.
Playing their best football, and obviously a talented group, really a lot of great size across the front on the offensive and defensive lines. I think Billy knows that's where the key is in the SEC in terms of length and size. They play a lot of players on defense. They've had a lot of guys play up front. But, you know, their 3 losses have come to 3 teams that are ranked in the top 10. At least I think they are. I don't even know. But they're really good teams, and they played those teams well. So a lot of respect for Billy. He and I have worked together before. I think he's building a really good program down there, and he is a tremendous football coach. And he does not leave any box unchecked, I can assure you of that, and know a lot of their staff. So should be a great game in Jacksonville. It looks like it's going to be great weather. It's always a really tough, hard-fought game. I think it'll be one of the most physical games we play all year.
All right, Jeff, my question to you is very simple. We're here, but are you surprised that Billy Napier is too?
Well, this was the meat of the schedule.
Yeah.
This is when, you know, most Florida fans thought they better get their wins early. I think you're right. I think they've gotten about 1 or 2 more wins than we thought. They gave Tennessee a scare. That game was a lot closer. And the other thing, Kaylee, is like something where Kirby said, he said, I think they've lost to 3 top 10 teams so far on their schedule. So that 4-3 looks a little bit better, but I think also that 4-3 means that they might lose to 4 top 10 teams on their schedule by the time the day is over.
Yeah, if you're watching at home, you might see some Florida fans around us, and I can guarantee you that's probably the most exciting reactions they have all day before they make that great mass exodus in the third quarter. But we appreciate the energy. We appreciate the effort, guys.
Third quarter sprint. You ready for it?
Plus 16.5.
All right. I do want to talk about DJ Lagway, though, because, I mean, true freshman quarterback, the first true freshman quarterback to start in this game, apart from Jacob Eason in 2016, I believe. He's who the Florida fans wanted in the first place. So much media hype. I believe we have his high school profile. He was the number 3 overall recruit, number 1 quarterback, National Gatorade Player of the Year, known for being one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in his class. But here's the thing. He only has 96 yards on 34 carries on the year, no touchdowns. I mean, Jeff, you cover recruiting. This is your area. How good really was DJ Lagway?
Well, I mean, he threw for 58 touchdowns last year. over 4,600 yards. He ran for another 16. And, you know, one of the things we saw from him last year was you had Georgia commitments, 5 stars, Joseph Jonah Ajonye, and also Justin Williams. And they also had to, you know, they couldn't get him on the ground. He was a tough guy to deal with. Mobile quarterback, but I don't think he's seen a defensive line and a linebacker crew quite like Jaylen Walker that he'll see this afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that his mindset coming into this game on the biggest stage against their biggest rival. And at first you had another guy that you could play behind, somebody to learn from, and now you're out there on your own. You're the guy. How do you expect him to perform in today's game?
I think he's gonna feel a lot of nervousness, a lot of energy, but I think he's going to want to basically try to put his stamp on this rivalry, put his stamp on this game. But it's just so hard, Kaylee. He's never seen a defense like this. He's never seen this sort of excitement, this sort of energy. And you know what, DJ Lagway, 5-star quarterback, you know, but I still believe, this is what I do, Kaylee, that team, they like to flash their skill players.
Yeah.
Their big skill signees. And the game is won in the trenches, and that's where Florida is really deficient.
So in just a minute, we're going to bring on Davin Bellamy, who's maybe going to give us an insight on how do you guard someone like that that's supposedly a great guy on the ground but really hasn't showed it? Do you put a lot of pressure in his face, or do you just let him mess it up himself? We're going to get Davin Bellamy here in just a minute, but we do want to remind you that on DawgNation GameDay, we are brought to you by Jittery Joe's. I'm excited to have that 3-game home stretch at the end of the season so we can get back to the downtown location. Tons of locations all over Athens, even in Atlanta. So even if you can't be with us here at the cocktail party today, make sure to stop by any Jittery Joe's location. But don't just do that. Download the app. That way you can skip the line. And believe me, I've seen it with my own eyes. There is always a line because the coffee's that good. You can skip the line and get 10% off your first drink, as well as make sure to check out their website at jitteryjoes.com so you can get one of those awesome commemorative coffee cans from 2021, 2022. You know what I'm talking about? They're amazing.
Those tins, I mean, I would expect to see people with a fully prepared tailgate to have some Jittery Joe's coffee tins around here this morning.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead and bring in the former Georgia linebacker, Davin Bellamy. Davin, I haven't gotten the chance to talk to you in almost 2 weeks now, but I am stoked to have you on.
Hey, Kaylee, how's it going? So glad to be back.
Listen, one thing that we just talked about is you've got a true freshman starting on the opposite side of the ball in DJ Lagway, someone who put up tremendous numbers in high school, especially on the ground. But his stats so far this season don't necessarily show that. So from a defensive standpoint, how do you approach a true freshman quarterback like that? Do you just go blitz, 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 or do you sit back and let him, I guess, mess himself up? Because there's so much pressure on him, right?
Right. You know, I think DJ's a great player, and I think he is going to be one down the road. But I think right now he's having that learning curve. You know, he's thrown 6 picks already. So he's shown that, you know, he's going to give you the ball. I think when playing a young quarterback, you know, he hasn't seen a defense as multiple as Georgia. You know, Georgia has a lot of different funky third down fronts. You know, I've said in the past, I don't like Mikael Williams in the A-gap sometimes on third downs, but that just shows you how many packages Georgia has. And as you've seen when we played Texas, our packages and schemes were even able to, confuse Urs, who's a 5th-year guy. So I just think just the multitude of fronts that we can bring in our defense will slow them down, and you don't really need to do a lot.
Yeah, earlier this season, you said that you weren't necessarily satisfied with Georgia's defensive performance, but they put on an absolute clinic at Texas. So now, a few games later, post-Texas, post-bye week, what do you make of the most recent version of the Georgia defense that we've been seeing?
Well, I think the defense is now starting to shape into that championship defense. We had a lot of young players to play this season, and I challenged them, the Texas game, to grow up. And around week 6, week 7, you're not a freshman anymore. So I think you're starting to see our back end grow up, and we're not letting those explosive plays just happen downfield. We're winning those one-on-one, matchups. And also I think our third down is a lot better. You know, we went in on a 2-game streak where we weren't getting any sacks, and then we just unload on Texas. Well, I think that's because you had guys playing more of their position. You know, you've seen 13 and 11 on the edge doing what they do. So, you know, at first, I didn't like how we were stopping the run. I didn't like the pressure we were getting on the quarterback, and we just allowed too many explosive plays. Those 3 things have been fixed. So I'm definitely more pleased, you know, than I was in the beginning of the season.
Hey, DB17, man, I got a question for you. I got to look at the record books a little bit. And I remember your entanglements with the Gators was kind of down, up, down, up. And I remember the 2015 game. You had a really good game. You had, I think, 7 tackles and a sack, but you only got the Gators once, man. Is that something that you look back on and you wish you could have had more success in this great, great rivalry?
By the way, man, I love that nickname. That's my favorite nickname, man. I love that. But definitely that was a part of the reason why we decided to come back, is because, you know, we didn't want that on our legacy. And I remember, you know, Jonas Jennings, who's still there, when we was going on that season on Kirby Smart's first year, and we were losing, he was walking around practice. He was like, this is not how you want to be remembered. Don't check out. This is not how you want to be remembered. So just my record against Florida, and a lot of the guys that decided to come back, record against Florida, what's the reason why we decided to come back? We just didn't want our legacy not to be associated with winning, because we had so much talent, and we understand how important this game is. You know, when I first got to Georgia, Mark Richt made a great point and say, you know, you can lose certain games, but if you lose this game, this will get everybody fired. So we definitely understood how important this game was, and I definitely wanted to come back and check them off my list, you know, so, and we did it in a fashion that I always remember.
Mm-hmm.
How sweet was that win, Davin? Getting that first one, that 2017, that special year. I'm sure you could look up and see all the Gators fans leaving, man. What's that like to go 0 for 3 and then to finally get that big dub against the Gators?
Man, that felt amazing. I was actually making a video of me and Brandon's, you know, skit from Wednesday, and I was going through and I was watching the old Florida game and pulling some highlights, and you could just see the emotion in that team, how we were flying around, how flamboyant we were, how nasty we were. You can tell that we had a hit list that I keep, you know, bringing up. So to finally just not only win, but dominate. And we honestly knew that they hadn't crossed the 50-yard line. And when we put our backups in, we were pissed that they crossed the 50-yard line. And we were also more pissed that they gave up 7. So we came there with an edge, and we said exactly what we were going to do, and we did it. And the way we did it just hit way more, especially against Florida. And it was just perfect.
I think one of those things that whenever you talk about this game, the history of it, no matter who you're talking to, one of the topics of conversation that always comes up is the concept of a neutral site. Everybody has an opinion on it. From your perspective, was that something that you enjoyed, or would you have rather seen a home-and-home series?
Personally, this is me personally, I would like to see the home and away thing. You know, I love playing at home and having that energy. And like I say, when I was rewatching that game, I could just only imagine like when J.R. Reed stripped the ball and then ran it in for a touchdown, and how crazy it went in Jacksonville, and it split 50-50. Just imagine if that was in Sanford, you know? So I like being on the road because of that back against the wall mentality. And there are also places that you want to experience. You only play college football for 4 or 5 years, you know? And you know, even though we hate the Gators, you know, you still want to play in that environment just to say you did it. And I think the guys that go to Florida also agree. They kind of want to go play in the hedges just to experience it. So in my opinion, I definitely like kind of the home and away thing.
Davin, I got to ask a follow-up on that. Have you ever planned to do this game as a fan? Have you done it yet? I know you still got your hands in a lot of things. Like you and some of your 2017 Dogs, maybe J.R. Reed, when you guys are, a little bit older or whatever, have you guys thought about how much fun it would be to come to Jacksonville for the Georgia-Florida game?
That's definitely on the bucket list. I definitely want to experience it from the outside in, because now I'm further enough removed from, I'm kind of turning into a crazed fan a little bit. It's not like the player aspect of it, because I'm like 6-7 years removed. So I'm just turning into, oh yes, I love these guys. So that's definitely on my bucket list, when I have time. And I think when everyone stops playing football, because, some guys are still playing, some guys are in season. But when everyone kind of, stops playing and life slows down a little bit, that's definitely on the bucket list.
I mean, at this point, you're going to have to make the trip with us next year. It really is.
Right.
We do
No
it
doubt.
right. But
No doubt.
now we're at the halfway point in the season. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but how would you rate this Dogs team right now?
Right now, in my opinion, I think we're the best team in the SEC, and honestly, in college football, simply because we have the equity that a lot of teams don't have. I kind of think about when LeBron doesn't play well in the regular season and then just turns it on in the playoffs. Not saying that, our guys are taking the foot off the gas, but they understand that to win the national championship, it's a longevity thing. And I just think we're starting to peak at the right time. And a lot of teams haven't played in the big games we've played in. A lot of teams don't have the championship DNA that we have, and they're going to find ways to lose the game. And Georgia always finds ways to win, but that's because of the championship DNA that we have, and through culture we've been taught how to win. So I just think if we can cut down on those turnovers and just be more consistent and play just our brand of ball and find more of our identity on offense like we did last week, the sky's the limit. But I'm definitely starting to see the team form and peak at the right time while the other teams are kind of starting to fade off.
Yeah, you mentioned the turnovers and the offensive identity, and now you're at that point in the season where those nerves are out of the way. You've played a lot of games. You've got the fundamentals down, but you've really got to focus in on the things that you know you need to work on. At least for today's game, what's the biggest thing you'd like to see out of the Dogs?
Well, I would like to see us come out, and dominate. Even though this is a rivalry game and they're going to come out and they're going to play their best. In 2017, when I was there, it was a rivalry game too. And we knew that they hated us and we hated them. But we also was the number 3 team in the nation. So we went in there and handled business like the number 3 team in the nation. Even though there's going to be a lot of emotions riding in any given week, in the SEC could be that week. I want to see us come out. We're the more talented team. We have the more experience, and we're the older team with the better staff, just all above. I just want to see us come out and just dominate. And the game does not have to be close. And I just want to see us come out and dominate. Just dominate.
Well said, Davin. We'll catch up with you on the Dog Nation postgame show with Brandon Adams. We appreciate your insight and all that you do for Dog Nation.
Sounds good. Baby, go Dogs.
I think it's fascinating that you talk to people that have been in the program or really close to the program. They're kind of all centered around that home and away series.
I know, because they don't ever experience this, Kaylee. That's why I asked Davin dominate Bellamy. We got to call him dominate for the rest of the day, because that was his key phrase, Dog Nation. But they just fly in, they go to a hotel, they get on a bus, they go over the bridge, they come into a stadium, they go play, they go put their football game on, and then they leave, and they don't really see any of this. And that's what makes it so special. Like, this is a lot of these guys, Kaylee, I'll never ever entertain the argument that Georgia needs this extra recruiting weekend. Mm-hmm. Folks, there ain't one recruit that Georgia's missed on because there wasn't a big enough game for them to come see, and maybe Florida would have been that big game. First of all, Brennan told you good people this on Friday. Florida's not the team they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. If Georgia played Florida in Athens, it wouldn't have as much juice this season as Georgia versus Tennessee. That's just facts. Facts.
strong statement.
Facts.
You know when he puts facts at the end, he's being serious about it. Well, let's get down to some facts. Let's do some impact players. I'm going to start with mine first. My defensive player, it's got to be KJ Bolden. No Jaylen Walker for the first half. No Dan Jackson for the first half. KJ Bolden is going to make his first start for the Dogs today. I mean, I know Dog Nation, you got to be sad about what happened in the Texas game with those calls, but you got to be happy for a guy like KJ Bolden to get his first start today. 24 tackles on the year, 1 sack, 1 interception. This is the guy.
I know his mom and dad, Keisha, they're very excited about this, and Kai. And, you know, Davin was talking about if you're the better team, the better staff, the better program, the more established program, you just got to come in here and be dominant, what Davin kept saying. And I think how Georgia shows it's dominant. Listen, I talked to a lot of Georgia fans this week. I've talked to a lot of Georgia fans today. They're worried in true Munson fashion that, okay, no Dirty Dan Jackson, the heat-seeking missile, no Janelle Aguero. They're expecting Florida to maybe put up 14 points, 17 points in the first half because they're going to take advantage of Ja'Cory Thomas and KJ Bolden back there. Well, you know how you show you're the dominant program in this rivalry is if you still shut them down in the first half before Dirty Dan and Jonelle get out there in the second half.
It makes me think back to one of those things. It was after Georgia won their second national championship, or maybe it was even Orange Bowl last year, but it was on a message board somewhere, and it said, well, even when they take the starters out, that's when they bring in the 5-star backups.
Yeah.
So just because they're not the official starter doesn't mean they're not pretty dang good.
Yeah, KJ's pretty dang good, and I mean, KJ, listen, we've seen flashes. We think KJ can be pretty much almost what we saw out of Malachi Starks his freshman year, and Malachi Starks started almost every game his freshman year except his first one, and his issue is he just had Dan Jackson and he had Malachi in front of him to keeping him from starting the way Starks did in 2022.
So we've got a really defensive heavy impact players list today. You gave me Michael Williams, 6 tackles on the year, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. I do feel like we're now at that point today, and how he plays and how healthy he looks is going to tell us a lot about the progress that he made within the bye week. This Georgia team is at its best when it has a healthy Michael Williams.
Yeah, and what it does is if you add Michael, that makes Jaylen Walker on the other side more effective. Jaylen makes Michael more effective. And then if you can drop in maybe what we're hearing, you might get to see the first appearance of Jordan Big Baby Hall, native of Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Former 5-star who will get his first action of the season. He showed up as probable on the availability report, so that's very good news there for the Dogs. You also got, I think Georgia, the team we've seen so far when they've had their hiccups, when they couldn't stop the run, when they were giving up third downs and explosives on third downs, I think that was all caused by not having 3 or 4 of their top 6 or 7 defensive linemen up front. Georgia gets healthier. That was as healthy as they've ever been for the Texas game. Michael Williams is going to be healthier this week than he has been since the Clemson game to begin the year, and that bodes well.
Yeah, next guy has perhaps been the defensive MVP of the Dogs this season. Maybe no one expected other than my friend Connor Riley, who I host Dog Nation at Large with, and that's going to be Jaylen Walker. I mean, so much hype from the national media, NFL players. He's been getting all the love, and after that performance of Texas, I think that opened everyone's eyes to him and not just Dog Nation. 30 tackles on the year, 4.5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery. He's the kind of guy that you could make him an impact player every single game.
I mean, the way he's trending, he'll probably be the first dog to go double digits in sacks in years. The other thing, Kaylee, is Dog Nation knows. And another thing I noticed while walking around Everbank Stadium today is I saw a lot more 11 jerseys. I saw a lot of fat heads. People carrying around like the fat head wall decals or just the little things you hold up. I saw several Jaylen Walkers, and that's a big sign that the fan base loves themselves some Jaylen Walker.
Yeah, last one. We're going to give you an offensive guy, a homecoming of sorts, I guess you could say, and that's going to be Trevor Etienne. 82 carries, 422 yards, and 7 touchdowns on the year. And I mean, I feel like we've really seen him come alive in these last 3 games. I think this is a game, not just because he's returning home against his former team. I truly believe there are no bitter feelings there, but Florida's giving up the 2nd most rushing yards per game. This game, for him, I think he could really excel.
I mean, Kaylee, all you can say, and this game should mean a lot, and I can't imagine it meaning any more for Trevor Etienne this week, the same way it was for Carson Beck last year. It's sort of a homecoming, but it's really, Mr. Etienne does not want to lose to his old team, and to have two of Georgia's biggest weapons. I mean, you look at Etienne, he looks like an NFL back right now, and two of Georgia's biggest offensive weapons, Carson Beck and Trevor Etienne. This game means so much. This is personal. Yeah. This has a little bit more of that fire and vinegar that a lot of Dog Nation wants to see out of Carson. And I think, and you know, one thing about Carson, I don't even know if he's still fully healthy. I don't know if his shoulder's right yet, but you see him just working his way through, trying to get right, trying to play in these big games. And I think you're going to have another happy memory for Carson Beck today in Jacksonville.
Well, when you talk about Trevor Etienne, apart from game one, because he didn't play, you look at his numbers for the first 3 games. And the last 3 games that he's played, you can just tell that Georgia's not only putting the ball in his hands a lot more, but I mean, even look, first 3 games, 1 touchdown. Last 3 games, 16 touchdowns. But I think that the number that stands out to me is through the first 3 games, 5 receptions. Through the last 3 games, 15 receptions. That's already 20 receptions on the year, which matches what he did at Florida. I think you can tell that he's that kind of guy where not just good on the ground, but obviously they trust him to give him those quick passes. In fact, Kirby Smart talked about this. Here is Kirby talking about Trevor Etienne as a pass catcher.
Yeah, he's a really good receiver. He catches the ball well out of the backfield, as most of our backs do. Nate does, Cash does. He's a really good. I mean, you know, if you play man-to-man, he's one-on-one with the backer. If you play zone, then he can catch the ball underneath and turn it into a big gain. So, you know, those all backs that can catch the ball in the backfield are just, you know, that much more dangerous because it's hard to get through the defensive lines in the SEC. It's much easier when you catch the ball past them. You get to exploit that and have some explosives, and he's a good pass catcher.
I mean, I think that's what makes Trevor Etienne different than what we saw out of the running back room last year is his ability to do that and the trust that he has from Kirby Smart to be able to do that too. Because, like I said, when you look at the numbers, only 20 receptions last year for Florida already matched that. We're not even the halfway point of the season. You're helping out Carson Beck when you give him more options like Trevor Etienne.
I think, Kaylee, you know, a lot of people look at Etienne and they make the statement that he's Georgia's best back since DeAndre Swift. And I think, you know, I got to kind of hit the brakes on that a little bit because you remember how James Cook was and you remember how Zamir White was. But I think why Etienne is part of that conversation is he's kind of a hybrid of both of those players. He's big, he's powerful, he's fast like Zamir, but he's also got that third down all-around weapon out of the backfield, which is what Kirby said there, that James Cook has, and that's what makes him so dynamic. Last year's running backs, they didn't have that home run ability. They didn't have that, you know, you may scheme us up, but our guy's still better than your guy and we'll beat you. And I think that's what Etienne brings, and that's why he was brought in out of the portal to the Dogs.
Yeah, someone who is no stranger to the cocktail party. And we're going to get the cocktail party here in Jacksonville again next year. But after 2025, the game will be on the move for a couple of years before coming back here in 2028. Cody Chaffin has more on the future of Georgia, Florida.
I think money talks and everything else walks nowadays.
The old ball coach has a way with words, and in this case, he's explaining why the Georgia-Florida game will be heading to Atlanta in 2026 and Tampa in 2027 instead of a home-and-home series. A big payday will come as a result of the neutral sites. Right now, both teams make $1.5 million a year to play in Jacksonville, but other neutral site games are paying even more than that. For instance, Georgia made $5 million to kick off the season at Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Clemson. Florida coach Billy Napier admitted on the SEC teleconference this week that while he and Kirby Smart would have preferred a home-and-home series in Gainesville and Athens, quote, money makes the world go round. While Kirby Smart has said in years past he would love to play on home-and-home to gain an extra recruiting weekend, that neutral site money can now be used to pay players, which can help recruit or retain them. Steve Spurrier said during On the Beat this week he likes the way the Bulldogs are approaching NIL.
I think Georgia does as good a job of balancing how they pay the players. In my opinion, you can't have one quarterback making $1 or $2 million and the other guy's only making 10 or 15 grand, and especially if your quarterback's not playing very well.
The Georgia-Florida game's been in Jacksonville every year since 1933, with the exception of 2 years in the mid-90s when the Gator Bowl was being renovated. Those games were played on each school's campus. Now the game moves out of Jacksonville in 26 and 27. The Gator Bowl Stadium will undergo a $1.4 billion renovation. That will add a shade canopy designed to reduce heat inside the stadium, as well as wider concourses. Dog fans will get their first chance to experience that new stadium in 2028. A new contract that was just finalized Friday keeps the game in the newly renovated stadium for 4 more seasons through 2031. The details of the payouts weren't released, but once again,
I think money talks.
For Dog Nation, I'm Cody Chaffin.
Actually, I know what Cody said right there, but the payouts were released. After Cody recorded that piece, we learned that Georgia will make at least $10 million to play in Jacksonville in 2028 and 2029, then $10.5 in 2030 and 2031. Money talks.
Kaylee, you know, when these teams play at home, let me just put that in perspective. The number they bring in gate-wise is about $1.5 to $2 million for a home game. And so think about this. Let's do some simple math. You can still do that no matter how deep you are in at the tailgate.
I don't know about all that.
Maybe not.
I can't even do it sober.
But if you sit there and you have a home and away, then that means you're bringing in about $2 million every 2 years for your home games. And then if you do this, you're getting $10 million, $5 million per year, $10 million for 2 years. The math is simply mathing, and there's no way this game will leave Jacksonville when that sort of economic impact allows the city of Jacksonville, the Chamber of Commerce, to throw that much cash. I mean, Kelly, you know, in today's day and age, you can buy a starting quarterback for that $5 million right now out of the NIL.
I hear what you're saying, I do, but if it's not girl math, then I'm not going to get it. I'm just going to trust your word for it. Guys, when we come back, we're going to get some Sentell's intel on what recruiting looks like at a neutral site game. But first, this is DawgNation Game Day. We'll be back in 60 seconds.
There's never been a better time to put in a new luxury pool. From custom designed concrete and finishes, we can build the dream pool to turn your backyard into a vacation destination.
When my wife and I decided to get a swimming pool, we knew we had to go with the best at White's Pools. They made the process real simple for us. We got a chance to design exactly what we wanted. It was great for our family. We're enjoying it every day.
White's Pools has been the ultimate choice for thousands of homeowners in Atlanta. Visit us online and book your custom pool design today.
Nothing makes a house feel more like a home than quality windows. So trust the professionals at Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll equip your home with energy-efficient windows and doors just right for you. Schedule your free in-home, no-pressure consultation. Get product samples, installation options, and a free quote. Log on to PellaGA.com and visit our new Experience Center in Duluth. Tell them Brandon Adams sent you. Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Viewed to be the best.
DawgNation Game Day is sponsored by Cercheros, Lassiter Tractor, White's Pools, and Jittery Joe's Coffee.
All right, no home game. That's okay. You still get to recruit here in Jacksonville. Tell me how it works, Jeff.
So every other year, Georgia, Florida alternate. One year, which was last year, Florida got to sprinkle tickets onto their targets and recruits in the area. That didn't go so well for Florida. It didn't go so well for Florida the year before. This year, it's Georgia's turn, and you can't recruit. All you can do is you can sprinkle tickets around a lot of key targets. Georgia's doing it for a lot of South Georgia targets, a lot of Jacksonville targets, maybe some Orlando, Tampa targets to come into this game. You can't go talk to them. You can't sit down and have a conversation. You can't take selfies. Basically, all you can do is give them tickets. They show up, and then you can kind of wave at them from the ground because you know where they're sitting, and that's about it. But what it does is it gets them a taste of this rivalry, and it gets them a chance to watch the Dogs. Elijah Griffin out of Savannah, local, expected to be here. Isaiah Gibson expected to be here out of Warner Robins. Lagonza Hayward, the Tennessee commitment, expected to be here. And I'm also expecting Florida commitment Jeremiah McLeod to be here out of Lee County. Also Usman Kroma. Now, some guys have SATs, and they don't know when they're going to get out. Elias Williams told me he's taking the SAT this morning, and if he gets out and his brain's not wrecked, he's going to get down here as well. So it's all TBD, to be determined, but that's the type of crowd that Georgia will get to at least host some key targets for this big game.
Two things on this. Number one, I actually really like the concept of you just got to sprinkle tickets and you don't necessarily get to host them in the same sense, because in my mind it's one of those things where it's like action speaks louder than words. We're going to let our gameplay speak for ourselves instead of just telling you all these things and chirping in your ear the whole time. Just watch, get a feel for it, especially in a rivalry game like this. So it's cool that Georgia gets to host, but I do like that concept a little bit better of like, okay, you need to sit down and actually watch the game, watch what we do.
Yeah, there's no lounge where they can go to and watch all the other games and get themselves chicken fingers or get themselves some Coke and some drinks and some AC. So they'll actually get to watch the game. I think that's important. And also, it's sort of an easier Saturday for Georgia with recruits in the stands, but they don't have to treat them like VIPs and give them that white glove, turnkey, hosting, recruiting service.
All right, last thing on this. You mentioned him, Jeremiah McLeod, the 3-star defensive lineman who's currently a Florida commit, but there have been that crystal ball. You got to rub the crystal ball every time you talk about it. Flip that he'll go to Georgia. So if he's here today, he's being hosted by Georgia, but he's committed to Florida.
Yeah, Kaylee, if I was in that business, I would have put in one of those minion glasses, crystal balls.
Oh, yeah.
For Mr. McLeod way back at the Tennessee Tech game. I was told that went so well for him. He talked to me about it. It moved Usman Kroma's decision to the Dawgs. They both got a chance to really be embedded around the team, see what a weekend in the life of a Georgia Bulldog was like. They got to talk to the players. They got to get the really, really real scoop about the 100 emoji about what it's like to be a dog. They noticed how much the team cares about one another, how they all go out together, how it's really like a brotherhood. And that really struck a chord with both Jeremiah McLeod and also Usman Kroma. And I think the really interesting thing about McLeod is, Kevin Wynn, Georgia was going to try to flip him from Florida State. Now USC and its treasury is in the mix, I would say, a little bit for Kevin Wynn. So that really opens the door more for a player like Jeremiah McLeod.
So when we come back, we'll get a final availability report from Connor Riley. But first, the Dogs have made their way into the stadium. Here is the Kroger Dog Walk.
Hey, Dog Nation, I'm Brandon Adams. Welcome into Kroger's coverage of the Dog Walk. We're live here at Everbank Stadium, and the Georgia Bulldogs are about to make their way in for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. And making his way here first, it's Kirby Smart. You perhaps saw him put the thumb in the air, greeting these fans. You love to see that. Going to walk over, going to give some thumbs up. What a cool thing that is to see. Tate Ratledge also walking in too. He's got boots on, seems to be walking well. Does that mean that Ratledge is going to be ready to go later on today? We'll be watching that closely. One of the big stars, the Georgia Bulldogs. How about Jaylen Walker coming in? Check out the lining on the inside of that suit with the money bags. You love that. Here comes Chaz Chambliss coming in through there as well. Chambliss obviously a big part of this Georgia defense. Co-defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann walking by. Tight ends coach Todd Hartley. Wide receiver Arian Smith coming in behind that. You see wide receivers coach James Coley coming in. You get a look at Dylan Fairchild coming through. Xavier Truss, Jamal Jarrett came by a moment ago. There's offensive line coach Stacy Searles. Georgia Athletic Director Josh Brooks walking in with the team here right now. Here comes Jordan Hall through as well. That's another guy whose status we're watching very closely today. Cash Jones will flank him as the Dogs make their way into Everbank Stadium. Larger traveling party than you're sometimes used to seeing for UGA. Almost like a postseason type vibe here, more so than just a traditional running game. Here comes defensive lineman Christian Miller making his way through. Miller was a very important part of Georgia's success against Texas 2 weeks ago. Offensive coordinator Mike Bobo walking through. Here comes Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. Beck, obviously in his hometown, looking sharp in the suit. Got a Christian Dior version of the Chuck Taylors on. Quite a fashion statement. Jarvis Jones coming by. Jones was a star in this game back in 2012. The Georgia Bulldogs making their way through, getting ready for Florida coming up, 3:30 Eastern time. Of course, the announcement coming up this week that after a 2-year hiatus in 2026 and 2027, this game coming back to Jacksonville and perhaps for the long haul as more of these dogs start to make their way in. Check out the fits there on those Georgia players. Looking good, looking sharp. Getting ready for today. Quarterback Gunnar Stockton coming in now. Stockton oftentimes has the ball cap on, not today for him though. Dogs continuing to file in. Getting ready for a big one here tonight. You see John Jarrett walking in there, unmistakable with that big frame. Georgia rolling through. Getting ready for the cocktail party here today. Fans are loving it. They're gathered around. Everybody getting ready. Don't forget, all of our coverage here today brought to you by our friends at Kroger. That means check out Kroger for all your game day watch party needs. If you can't be here for the cocktail party, then make it a cocktail party right there at home and use Kroger to get stocked up on all of that. Also, plenty of coverage all day long here at Dog Nation, including the Dog Nation postgame show on video, all the Dog Nation video channels when it's all said and done. But for now, we'll send it back to Kaylee Mansell as a part of our Game Day pregame show. Kaylee, take it away.
I don't know what's more surprising, that Carson Beck was wearing Christian Dior Chuck Taylors, or that Brandon knew that they were Christian Dior.
I think that was really what caught my ear about that, Kaylee. You got a guy that can dabble in the fashion lane with Christian Dior, and he can also tell you about Jarvis Jones doing things for the Dogs back in 2012. That's our guy, BAA, a man of the people, but also maybe a man who's read some Vogue magazine before.
Yeah, if he's not too careful, I mean, Anna Wintour might be calling to have him as a Met Gala correspondent in 2025.
Can you imagine Brandon being like, what are you wearing?
Yeah, actually I can.
Who do you have on today?
All right, with that, let's go ahead and bring in Dog Nation insider Connor Riley. Connor, before we talk football, there's something that you told me a long time ago that's kind of stuck with me. I had just gone to New York. I was filming a show a few days later. I was wearing some sunglasses, and you said I needed to get new sunglasses, even though I had just bought those 2 days before. Are these Connor Riley approved?
They look a lot better than the ones you used to have.
Wow.
I'll take that. Hey, small wins, Jeff. Small wins.
That's a Connorism right there, man. Connor, there's one thing, though. What I've noticed amongst all the trends of fashion these days is it's almost the big sunglasses that cover half a lady's face are so vogue right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's less makeup I have to do, for being totally honest.
Speaking for the guy population, we'd probably like to see more of the face than the sunglasses.
Yeah, well, I don't cater to men. All right, let's start with this, Connor. You just got the final availability report. I think the two biggest question marks are Tate Ratledge as well as Jordan Hall. Is it still probable, or is it game time decision?
No, they've been taken off the availability report, which means they are good to play today. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see them out there on the field. But I would expect to see in some way Georgia play Tate Ratledge. We'll see how many snaps he's able to play after suffering a knee and ankle injury in the win over Kentucky. And then I think at the other end, you've got Jordan Hall. He's from Jacksonville. I think Florida's going to try and run north-south today, which I think leans into Georgia needing to have a strong performance from the interior defensive line. And so because of that, I think they're going to find a way to get him on the field, especially because this is a game in his hometown.
Connor, you're a man that likes to place wagers, or at least comment and analyze wagers. Who do you think Dog fans will see more of today? More snaps for Jordan Hall or more snaps for Tate Ratledge?
I would probably say Tate Ratledge. Georgia doesn't want to get their defensive line snaps too out of whack, and especially with this group mostly being healthy. Joseph Jonah-Ajayi now obviously lost for the season. I think that you're going to see Tate Ratledge probably play more snaps than Jordan Hall. I think Georgia at most is looking for maybe 15, 20 snaps from Hall. I think there's a good chance where Tate plays in the 30 to 40 range.
Connor, interesting thing. I know everybody notices Anthony Evans. You had that story for us on DawgNation.com earlier in the week. Do you feel it is as simple as the next man up and Jacoby White becomes the primary punt returner? What are you looking to see out of that position today?
Yeah, I'll be interested. We should get a chance here in a few minutes to see Georgia go through some punt returns during warm-ups, and I think that might be interesting to see who Georgia puts out there. Like, if they want a safe option, I think they could put maybe a Dylan Bell or a Cass Jones back there. But if they do end up going with Jacoby White, I'm going to be really interested to see what sort of impact he has on this game. This is a guy that people have thought has been close to seeing the field at times this season. And with Anthony Evans out, if Georgia's maybe looking for a difference maker in that punt return game, as opposed to a more just safe, sure-handed option, I think Jacoby White might be a guy that they might be willing to try back there, a la Dominic Blaylock in the 2019 season.
Perhaps one of the people that we haven't talked maybe enough about on the show today is going to be quarterback Carson Beck, who's had tons of ups and downs this season. But when I think about last season, for me, the Florida game was the first time I really thought, like, okay, he can lead us to he can lead the Dogs, sorry, Connor, to another national championship. In my mind, this was his wake-up game. I still don't know if we've seen that from him at this point in the season. Could this be the exact same spot as the exact same time as last year where that happens again?
I don't know, because he played really well in wins against Kentucky last year. I think the second half on the road against Auburn really showed what he was capable of. But this game means a lot to Carson Beck. He said as much after last year's performance. And this time last year, they didn't have Brock Bowers in this game. They still found a way to really jump out early on Florida. And so this time around, with Carson not playing all that well against Alabama, not playing all that well against Texas, I think the big thing for Carson is, can he even get back to say what he was doing against Auburn, where he played a really clean and efficient game? And if he's able to do that, I think that alone is enough for Georgia to get a win today.
Connor, I know the quarterback QB1 at Georgia always gets graded by the strictest measures. Do you feel like maybe most of the fan base can look at Carson and say it's not just the drops, maybe he's still got something lingering, maybe it's a shoulder? Do you think with the evaluation right now with Carson, fair, unfair, do you think most fans have that take that into account when they watch how he's playing right now?
I don't think it's an injury thing when it comes to Carson. I think especially coming out of the bye week, and really since that first bye week against Kentucky, he's been pretty healthy, all things considered. I think Carson puts a lot of pressure on himself to go out there and play well. I think that's going to be really important for him. Obviously, look, he came into the year with great expectations. He put those on himself. He welcomed them. Wanted to win a Heisman Trophy. That I don't think is going to happen at this point in time. But if Georgia's going to win a national championship, he's going to need to play well. And I think he knows that. He understands that. And going out there and doing it against Florida on Saturday, I think is going to be a very positive step when they have to go on the road against an Ole Miss team that looks to be playing really well right now, and then home against Tennessee in 2 weeks. And if you're able to get through this SEC slate, 7-1, with all the ups and downs that Carson has had, a 7-1 SEC record with a win over Clemson is more than enough to get Georgia into the college football playoff. And so that's really, I think, the next step that Carson needs to take care of.
All right, Connor, we'll appreciate your time. And as Jeff Sentell says, we'll see you on the pages of DawgNation.com all throughout the game.
Yep, as always, it was a pleasure.
All right. To sum all of this up, Jeff, the game maybe doesn't mean as much as it did last year in the sense that there's no SEC East champion. This isn't a season-defining moment for someone's career, but you're here. You see all the fans, all the little arguments out in the parking lot, and you can't help but feel still like this is one of the more important games of the regular season, despite the records and despite what it means now in terms of going to the playoff.
Kaylee, I can put it simply, really great Georgia football Bulldogs. Coach Hartman, Coach Dooley, back in their days, even when I was a student at Georgia, I would get the chance to speak to them, and some of my duties as a student allowed me to kind of be immersed with stuff like that. This is what they've always told me. They've always told me that you don't know the Georgia Bulldogs here. You don't know how good of a team Georgia has until they come out of that Florida game, because it's different. It's emotional. It's the split stadium. Florida has a great team, great program, great fan base, and it's difficult. It's not going to be the easiest game. It's not like going to South Carolina and winning. And when you come out of Jacksonville looking good, feeling good, healthy, with a convincing win over Florida, that's when you know you have a great Georgia football game. It's like that today in the playoff era. It was like that 40 years ago when Georgia would have to beat Florida, and then they figure out, okay, are we good enough? Are the Georgia Bulldogs good enough to go beat Auburn the next week and then Tech the next week? And that was really how you figured out how good Georgia was, because they went from an SEC contender to an SEC championship.
Yeah, even though it may not mean the same thing, it still feels the same way as it always has. And I think walking around here and experiencing this place, you're reminded of that even though the records don't align like maybe they used to, or maybe you don't dislike the Florida coach as much as you disliked all the others, being here in Jacksonville in front of the stadium with the Jacksonville Bulldog Club, I'm reminded of why this game is so important to so many people.
I mean, my heart kind of aches a little bit because I'm already thinking next year one more, and then Kaylee, maybe you and I'll be doing this in front of Raymond James Stadium or Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and nobody's going to have the stuffed plush Gator on a string where they throw it out in front of a car and they let the car tires back up and back over it. It's so sophomoric. It's so 10th grade, 11th grade fun, but it is still so much fun and so much, very much the fabric of this rivalry.
Well, Dog Nation, this is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Even if you're not here with us in Jacksonville, you can still enjoy a cocktail at home, and I would encourage you to do that while we wait until kickoff at 3:30 for DawgNation Game Day. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Jeff Sentell. We'll see you right back here directly after the game for the DawgNation postgame show.